Good morning. Cheers. Get yourself a cup. Pour it up. I've been up for a couple hours. This is already like losing its heat. I've already run to the doctors and back. Had to get my last hepatitis B shot for work. Morning, Stephen and Chris. I need to reach out to both of you guys soon about planning on shipping out your snakes, by the way. I may have to take a Monday off to do that. So I'm looking at my schedule and calendar. I will get back to you. There's 2 other people that I need to ship snakes to as well. So hang tight. I know you guys are both super flexible and patient. I just want to give you an update while I have you here. What I do? What's up, Carly? Good morning, Ray. Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Paul. Morning, everyone. Yup. What's up, Dan? Good morning, Terry. Hello. Oh. Yeah, we'll work out the details, Chris. I got your baby here. You too, Steven. We'll figure it out. I appreciate y'all being flexible. I used to have a work schedule that allowed me to ship and receive super easy. Now I don't. So I have to have my coworker receive some snakes for me next week that are coming in, and that's easy enough to coordinate. It's just, moving things around. So we'll make it work. But yeah, I'm sure a couple of you guys saw the big jungle girl that I posted the other day that I acquired. It's the first snake I brought into the collection in like 9 months or so. 10 months, actually. She is a 2011 jungle produced from a zebra clutch from Nick Mutton. My good friend Travis Johnson bought her as a baby or juvenile from Nick years ago and has had her since. And she's here now because she produced 2 clutches with an unrelated jungle male, also from Nick Mutton. Yo, Jeff. And so basically these 2 animals paired twice, same pairing, and each time the clutches were a train wreck. They resulted in kinked babies. It was just a disaster. Later on, the male, the sire, ended up producing just a random kink in his tail, and he was sold off as a pet. And then Travis was moving on from this female, and I wanted to bring her in because she's so spectacular, and I wanted to do the legwork to see if she was the one contributing any genetics that resulted in kinking, or if it was the male. Because if she's good to go and she breeds, she's an A++ top shelf animal. So that's her. And then I've got some more Popwood stuff coming in next week from Bratzy Boy, and Eric Burke's going to send me some stuff too. I have no idea what he's sending me. It's just kind of a mystery box because I sent him a smorgasbord of things a couple months back. So finally bringing new snakes in. Not that I need any. I need new snakes like I need a hole in my head, but the addiction goes on. Jeff, yo, Ray, how are those hatchlings doing from Brian's vlog? They're doing really well. The female is deep in blue right now. Pretty quickly she went into shed, and the male doesn't look like he's going into shed, but he's alive and feisty and doing his thing. He's just a third of her size, so he hatched out at like 8 grams. Weight-wise, that's as big as my children's python hatchling, so he's tiny. She's much larger. Let me take a look at him real quick. Yeah. Chubby little thing. Giving me a little mini hood there. Look at that. You're just a little wannabe cobra, aren't you? So that's a decent sized baby. Much chunkier than carpets are. Not quite as long, but still a pretty big baby. Wish I had a few more to show for my efforts, but it is what it is. Oh, look at that. Full little first hood. Your first hood. What are you doing? Little grumpy girl. Ooh, ooh, we got a little cobra here. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about these. When I brought in the parents, my goal was just to have some, and then once I realized how rare they were and how rare captive breeding was, my goal was to breed some, and I've checked that off my list. But because I have limited space and so many other projects, as much as I love these guys, I would rather see them go to the hands of keepers who are going to perpetuate this species in the hobby. And there's a couple folks that have the other species and a couple of these, and they really want to see them produce captively regularly and often. Look at her, she's giving me her first little hood. Sassy girl. So there's a couple folks that I will be sending off this entire project to. I feel like I've broken the seal, ripped the band-aid off, so to speak, on getting the adults to breed, and I think it's just a matter of time before they breed in more prolific numbers and do better. I think the species isn't necessarily hard to breed. They just need a devoted keeper behind them who's willing to be patient. You don't really need to do much temperature cycling. You can do some food cycling. You can do some temperature cycling. I'm actually working on a write-up on these guys, and they certainly experience quite a dramatic seasonal shift, but it's a sort of a bi-seasonal. There's 2 seasons, dry and wet, and both of those seasons are accompanied by quite a dramatic temperature fluctuation. So that being said, I don't think they're hard to breed, and I think it'll just take a few people passionate about them to keep it going and produce more regularly of these guys and the speckles and the blondes. And so I think the responsible choice for the species, for the hobby, is to put these in those folks' hands. Big John, I have not even offered them food yet. This girl's just going into shed right now. The male isn't, but I'm anticipating a little bit of a challenge. We'll see. I've heard both sides. I've heard that they take rodents readily. I've also heard of folks having to resort to scenting with frog or gecko or lizard scent. Both scenarios, I have the necessary scents and tools and feeders available. So I shouldn't have any issue getting it done. It's just figuring out what these ones want. So we shall see. I'm super stoked. They're not as like cranky and nutty as the parents are, which is good. It's pretty standard when you start getting away from the wild animals and start producing captive born and bred. You'll see folks labeling some of these as like LTC, which means long-term captive. So that would be an import. Occasionally you see folks with CB mad hogs, and that means captive born. That doesn't mean they bred them. That means somebody brought in a female who produced a clutch of eggs after being brought into captivity, and those babies hatched in captivity, but by no means are they captive born and bred. These are true blue captive born and bred. So I'm going to hopefully put my adults and these 2 babies in some capable hands of folks who will do right by the species long term. So I think it's the right thing to do, and hopefully one day when I have a house and more space, maybe I'll get some captive born and bred animals from my founding stock, is what they will be essentially. Have I seen them tail rattle at all? Not these little guys. The adults will do everything. They'll tail rattle, they'll hood, they'll do all sorts of cool stuff to tell me they hate me. There's one of my adults in particular who just like despises my existence. So, yeah, they're fun. They're definitely exciting, but I don't know. If I'd have found them before Morelia, I'd be more keen on keeping them, but I sort of accomplished my goal with them as far as breeding them, getting long-term captive animals to adjust well, and learning about them. I'm currently working on a care sheet and a bit of an article for them, because if you go looking up any sort of publications, there isn't any, really. There's not much out there. So, working on that. CBB is different than BBC. Yeah, BBC is a TV channel. Thank you, Eric. So that's the update on those guys. I'm gonna leave the male in there. He's doing just fine, but he's much smaller, so harder to show off, honestly. So that's what's going on with those. That was kind of my big news. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is I don't know if any of y'all caught the Triple B episode that Brian released showing Nick Mutton's talk from the Herpeton conference down in San Diego in June. And he spoke a lot about all of the species and subspecies and their ranges and his experience finding them in the wild, breeding them. It was a very insightful talk. It's about 40 minutes. It's really good talk. Sorry, I got to get that in before it goes cold. But one of the biggest takeaways on that, and I had to write it down just to keep track, but the taxonomy in carpet pythons is changing. This has been sort of whispered behind the scenes for a few years about it changing, and there's been a lot of folks in Australia doing the research, and so it's not anything new to those of us who pay attention to the goings on behind the public eye. So basically, there's going to be some shifts, and it's based on actual genetic testing. So Warren Booth of Boa Booth, who's a big boa guy, but he does a lot of the DNA sequencing and sampling and all that stuff. He gives us the true insight on a scientific basis of what these animals are. If you look at a map of Australia and New Guinea, and if you saw Nick's talk, he had a great map showing how the way it used to be before the water levels rose, and only 6,000 years ago, which isn't that long ago, they were connected and you could walk from Australia to New Guinea. So he was discussing how the fauna is Australian, which makes perfect sense. So what's going to happen is they're going to change some of the taxonomy. So there's a Black Mountain corridor. So if you look at the east coast of Australia, there's a spot called the Black Mountain corridor, and it's sort of like a dividing line. Everything below that is considered a coastal carpet until you hit diamond. So if you knew the old traditionally accepted range map, you'd know that it's like diamonds, coastals, and then there's a little spot of jungles in there. And they've all been considered distinct subspecies. Well, diamonds are going to stay their own Morelia spilota. Just above that, it's coastals until you hit that Black Mountain corridor. And then above that is all going to be considered the same. So Papuans and Darwins are going to be lumped back together. Jungles and coastals will be lumped together. They're essentially the same. Imbricata is still their same thing. Breadlie is still their own thing. I think inlands are still a subspecies, but they're going to change. Let's see here. So you will be left with Metcalfi, which are the inlands. You'll have the Variegata, which are the Darwins and Papuans. They're all going to be the same, and Cape Yorks. Morelia spilota McDowelli, which will be your coastals, that will include what we traditionally consider jungles. So they are genetically basically the same. Good morning, John Feely. Everybody say good morning to John. Morelia spilota, which are your diamonds, they're staying the same. Morelia breadlie staying the same. And then Imbricata, they've always been their own thing. So we're basically going from like 8 or 9 groupings down to 6. So the biggest implications in that are saying that Darwins and Papuans are the same. And that's been a discussion for years. If you look at them, they have the same color tones. They really don't look terribly different. It's going to ruin some people's day, that's for sure. But Tom, what are the purists going to do when the taxonomic changes? They're either going to get with the times and just roll with the changes and accept it. The science has been done. It is still going on, but it has been done. So you can't deny it at this point. The way I see it is people will still keep their lines and groups organized separately, even if they're genetically the same. because they certainly phenotypically vary quite a bit, and they do look very different. And that seems to be more associated with the biome and the environment those animals are found in. So I imagine those folks will sort of treat it like a locality variation. Um, I will still refer to things as coastals and jungles, even if their scientific name is now the same. Um, Darwins and Papuans, I will still refer to them as, individually and different, even if they're genetically the same. I don't think it's really going to change anything too much in the hobby. I just think you'll see less strict attention from the purist side of things. I think people will still aim for black and yellow jungles and distinctly different coastals, and I don't think you're going to see too much change. The taxonomy has certainly changed, and you can't do anything about that. I just think it's going to put some of the arguments to rest, is all. I think we will still categorize them differently, and those who are purists or like to keep coastals and jungles separately, like myself, I think will still do that. I think the folks who don't mind crossing them just have more argument on their side as to why it's acceptable in their eyes. And it's ultimately at the end of the day, we're keeping snakes in boxes, right? So who cares? But we just now know how to correctly discuss these things or label them or give them that information. So a lot of reclassification is going to happen. Yeah, Big John brings up a good point. There's a lot of variation, and now things are getting easier and more affordable to do. There's more technology. So, Chris, jungle and coastal have a huge size difference. Is that just a locality evolution like super dwarf retics? Yeah, probably. I would imagine prey size has something to do with it. It's a good question, actually, because I do have like a 4-year-old zebra who is, maybe 5 feet, and then a 4-year-old coastal who's pushing 7 feet. So there is some difference in that. The best way I can describe it is evolution is ongoing. It's never static. It's always dynamic, right? So it's this timeline that's continuous, right? And we are just catching up into how we discuss them or label them, right? People like to organize and label things so we know how to refer to them. 6,000 years isn't very long in like the greater scheme of things. So you could arguably say that we are very early on in the divergence of these groups of carpet pythons. So, if our species is still around in 50 to 100,000 years, which probably won't be because we're destroying our planet, maybe then genetically Papuans and Darwins will be more distinct, with more separation over a longer time and no overlap of populations. You will see divergence. It's kind of like alligator snapping turtles. They are very sedentary, and there are 3 drainage river basins, and now they've been separate for so long they have diverged genetically. So it'll be something like that. I just think we're kind of early on in those groups of animals as far as their separation goes. So it just means that word pure, it was already sort of like a dirty word to use unless you could back it up. It just means that like it's a little less relevant in some regards. It's still relevant. Lineage is still relevant. It's the only way to really tell what you have. So yeah, it's just how we organize the library that is our snake collection. That's all. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you keep what you want, you breed what you want, and yeah. So treat it like localities, I will say. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, that was a cool talk. It was a really good one. I'm glad Brian was there to film it and capture it for those of us who weren't able to make it. During Herpeton, I was out in Philly at Northeast Carpet Fest, and I do not regret missing her baton because that was like one of the best times of my life. But I knew that there were some cool discussions going on there, so I'm glad somebody was able to film it and capture it. So that was pretty sweet. Tom, poking the bear. Now we can label everything pure. I shied away from the word pure a couple years ago. I don't like using it. Because what does it even mean? You know, like, who knows? Chris, so your 2016 pure female jungle, which I have referred to as Morelia spilota shani, will now be a McDowellii. Technically, yeah. Technically, Morelia spilota shani no longer exists. Shani is being done away with. You can refer to it as Morelia spilota McDowellii, but from old jungle lineage, like that's the other thing that's going to come out is new labels, like for our sake, is going to come out. Like, do we call them jungle types, like the chondro folks do, with their sarong type, lamina type, that sort of thing, or do we just still call them jungles, just jungle McDowellis or what, whatever? Who knows? We'll see what sort of tastes better as we say it. It's going to take some time. Just how it goes. So, ordered my first carpet last night from Nick Mutton. Should have it next Tuesday. Congrats, Xavier. That's awesome. That's a really good way to go for your first carpet. You'll be really stoked for sure. Just the quality and the information behind them and their lineage and history is fantastic when it comes from Nick. So I think you'll be very happy. Yeah, the changes in taxonomy shouldn't influence your love for them at all. The way I see it is, if you want to keep things distinct and separate, do so. Just keep good records about it, regardless of what the binomial nomenclature requires us to label it as. You can still refer to them as jungles and coastals and Darwins and that, because those names still have a lot of historical significance and relevance in as far as like where their background hails from and all of that. So I think it's still important to keep track of that as much as it is to keep track of lineage. It's just going to be another added layer of their lineage, essentially. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, the taxonomic changes might make things a little bit more confusing for new keepers who are getting into it right now during this shift. They're already rather confusing because a carpet is not just a carpet. There's like 6 or 8 different kinds. Well, now 6, but it will be definitely different. And the other downside is now the complete carpet python is officially sold out. You can no longer go on and buy it from Nick or the publisher. You can find secondhand copies of folks selling it. Otherwise, it's gone. But they are working on a second one, so that will include the new classifications. And Big John, yeah, you're right. Like how people still call all boas red tails. That's changing a lot too. Vin Russo is working on a republication of the complete boa, and they've since done more or less the same thing. There's Saboge, there's Boa Imperator, and then there's another one, and they've shifted and changed those around, and that will likely change again in the future. There's a lot to go on with boas. They're still discovering new species and stuff, so that's going to be a big change continuously. So the paper hasn't been published and or peer reviewed. To say that it's already said is not fair. You're right. Yeah, it does have to be picked out and published and analyzed, but that's more or less the direction it seems to be going. So everyone should just be flexible and roll with it. No sense getting upset over like the changes because now you have to change the label on your tubs or something like that. It is what it is, right? So, yeah. I think somebody asked about pairings for this year. I got a lot going on, so that new jungle girl who has a tendency towards striping, if she's settled in, which I doubt she will be, I might give her a crack at breeding this year. I don't think she'll want to, just because of the change of scenery. And the male that produced my stripes this year, he hasn't eaten a ton since his breeding, so I don't know if he'll be up for the challenge of breeding again this year. We'll see, but that would be the male I would pair her to because of the striping. So chances are it'll probably be next year. I'm gonna try my hand at breeding Crebos here. Hopefully get another litter of rainbow boas, because those are fun and people really want those. Going to try and do the pure Darwin albino. No, there's that word pure. That girl right here to my het albino male. Super zebra het axanthic to an axanthic zebra. Tiger coastal to a caramel coastal. Striped possible super caramel albino to my citrus tiger het albino. Xanthic zebra to axanthic coastal. Another pair of Papuans. And maybe some Amazon tree boas if I'm lucky. So there's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot going on potentially. So we'll see. But that's the way of the world. There's always a lot going on. There's always a lot going on. So stay tuned for all of the taxonomic changes ongoing with Nick and the folks over in Australia. Scott Eipers, or Scott Eiper, is doing a lot of the groundwork out in Australia. So it's a lot to look forward to. That book will probably come out sometime next year, and then it'll be peer reviewed. Who knows where that'll go. So the taxonomic changes have not officially been put in place yet. So you can still call your jungles Morelius Belotochenii until then. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. Exciting times, lots going on. So yeah, and then for any of you all local, the Sacramento Reptile Show was this past weekend, and that was a blast. Really big venue. Arizona or Phoenix Herp Society showed up in a big way. They always come out, but like they seem to do it bigger and better every year. Saw one of the biggest fer-de-lances I've ever seen. I didn't even know they got that big. Its head was like just massive. Like it's just an absolute beast of a fer-de-lance. Freaking landmine of a snake. Bunch of cobras, bunch of crocs, bunch of puffies and gaboons and rattlesnakes and just everything a venomous keeper could want almost. It was just an insane collection. Very wonderful display. Double-sided like trailer with the sides that fold up and the cages right there, plus a whole bunch of cages that ran around the corner in this back section. I mean, they did it huge. It was really cool. There were a lot of cool vendors out there. There's definitely a lot of room to fit more vendors in that building. It's a new space. It's out in Cal Expo. I think the thing that's shooting that show in the foot is the cost. It's like double the cost of getting a table at Pomona. I'm not going to say anything. All I know is that I know quite a few people who are no longer vending that show because it's too expensive. Small local folks as well as big companies, they've just decided like it's not worth the expense and the travel and the roll of the dice. Even if it is a bigger venue, it's a new show, it's great. It was a lot of fun. There was a good amount of people there. Left a little bit more to be desired, I will say. I didn't really see anything mind-blowing around there. The coolest thing to me was the shop that I work at that I'll be going out to today, GX3 Grant. He had some black dragon eggs that just started hatching the day of the show. So he brought a couple of the eggs that were in that first clutch pipping, and it was super cool to see a black dragon nose poking out of an egg on the table. So that was really rad. And then Justin Kobilka flew out and hung out with Nick over at Renowned Reptiles. And Chase was out there with them. So they didn't bring any snakes with them. They were, just helping out and showing up and putting a face to it all and selling some posters and shirts and things like that. But it was really cool to meet Chase and introduce myself and see him and see that he's doing well. I met Justin before, so it was really cool to talk with Justin. Got to talk Bull and I a little bit. So really cool folks. All of my friends out here locally seem to be super busy at their booths and doing really well. So I'm glad for them. It sounds like they did a fantastic job and they had a good show. So all in all, it was a great time. I think it's only going to get bigger and better. I think it's going to get more and more full. I hope the price goes down. It's really expensive. Even getting into the show for people is expensive. I didn't pay for it. I sort of weaseled my way in. I always do. And yeah, it was a good time. It's a fun one. So I don't know if there's any more shows that I'll be going to coming up until the next Super Show down in SoCal, which I can't call Pomona anymore because it's going to be in Anaheim. Weird. I'll probably still slip and call it Pomona, and everyone will be like, "What? Don't you mean Anaheim?" Anyway, it's a big one. It's a fun one. I haven't missed it in like 6 or 7 years, so I hope to keep that trend up, but we'll see. Life is expensive and full of curveballs. So, yeah. I'm going to probably end this one short. I catch myself after like 40 minutes, and here we are already at 30, so it happens fast. I still have a bunch of jungles, the male, mostly, actually pretty much all males left from my maternally incubated striped jungle clutch. I said I was going to keep them for a year, and I just had too many people looking for them to say no. And I already knew I wasn't going to keep all of them, and I pretty quickly figured out which ones I wanted to keep. So just the natural order thing. Sorry, Howard. I know you're probably not watching, but somebody will tell you. Was initially thinking, oh, I'll just keep them for a year and watch them all color up and enjoy them. That's an expensive thing to do. It's feeding, all those animals for a year and housing them, which I have the space, but there's just a lot of people asking for them, and gotta give the people what they want. So, yeah, that's about all we got. Yeah, Tinley's coming up. I won't be making it to Tinley. I have yet to make it to a Tinley. It's just expensive coming all the way out from the West Coast to go to that show. So one of these years I'll make it, but right now I'm working on trying to buy a house. I want to buy a house. I'm sick of being in an apartment with people stomping around over my head and limited space. So 1 year, 1 year I'll make it. So anyway, I'm probably going to cut this off here, get ready for working at the shop, and yeah, I think one of these episodes we'll talk about. Ryan Cox asked to sort of talk about, what did he say? I think some of the equipment I use, tools, things around the cages, how I do things, just like the essentials. And I had thought about making a video about that for a while, and then right as I was working on it, somebody else dropped one, and it was way better than my idea. So I was like, meh. So I put that on the back burner. So we will see. We'll see. Jeff, let's go to Australia. Holy crap, dude. That would be amazing. Need to hit the lottery before I can, justify spending that kind of money. So we'll see. But yeah, it's a pretty short one. I feel we didn't even pull out any carpets. Pull out a hog nails. What the hell's the matter with me? This girl, how's that? Right here. Okay. This is the girl I posted this morning on Instagram. So if you were drooling over her there, here she is in the flesh. Really cool. Really starting to color up. Put some size on. Need to feed them. They're due for a feed. So pull out a coastal. We can do that. That'll be our send off. A lot of coastal, he says. I'm gonna get lit up if I pull those out. Pulled her out last week. Hold on, I'll grab something different. Hey. Put it out. So, they are not ready this year, but this is a tiger head axanthic coastal from Ryan Rad Reptiles. Got a trio of these from him. They're putting on some size. They will not be going this year. Out even next year. We'll see. Coastals seem to do better when you give them more time to grow up. But they're doing that quite fast, so we will see. Yeah, I do need to do a rainbow care video. I do need to do that one of these days. This girl's going into shed too. Yep. So look forward to a lot more axanthic stuff in the future, axanthic tigers, so on and so forth. So we shall look forward to the future. Robert Cormany, what's up? I'm getting out of here, y'all. Have a good, what is it, Friday? Yeah, have a good Friday. I will talk to all of y'all later.